everyone. This is Ms. Cagle. Welcome to Unit 3, the Instructions Report Unit. So we have been writing professionally now this is our 4th week because you had that whole Get to Know Me unit at the beginning. And so this week we are going to take our abilities as professionals in our field and teach material to beginners or to people who may be unfamiliar with how to do a certain task. So for this week's mission or goal, you are going to be writing an instruction report. So you are going to take any skill you know how to do. It could be changing the oil, it could be rotating your tires, it could be baking a cake or sewing a granny square. Anything like that you are able to do, and you are going to write up an instructions report of how to do it, what skills are needed, what the safety warnings are, and what materials are needed to complete that assignment. But let me make something very clear. By the end of this week, you have 2 components due. Component 1 is the instruction report itself, and it is due in the middle of the week. Component 2, you are going to be doing a presentation of those instructions, because it is one thing to write instructions up. It is another thing to be able to show someone how to do the skill using your instructions. So if you're going to show me how to change the oil, you need to change the oil in somebody's vehicle. It could be yours, it could be your granny's, it could be your coworkers, whatever. You've got to be able to change the oil, and you've got to either film yourself doing it or photograph yourself doing it. You cannot use stock images to do that. And then, if you're going to bake a cake, show me how to bake a cake. Some issues we've run into the past with this assignment is students want to do their job as the instructions report, how to process this substance in the work that they do for a living. And the issue that they ran into is that the company does not allow them to film or photograph how these machines run, which is fair. And it's a legitimate concern. So don't do something you can't photograph. You technically have 2 40% written component assignments due this week. It is a large week, so please make sure, hopefully, you're getting ready early. So let's go over the breakdown. You need to look over the guidelines. You need to read Creating and Integrating Graphics, look at the sample report, complete the secret word, complete the instruction report planning assignment. That is an outline. We'll go over that. And then the instruction report by the middle of the week. You need to look over the guidelines of how to integrate oral presentation stuff. I am going to go over the student sample, but there are several links. If we kind of scroll down here, there are several links of how to add narration to a Microsoft PowerPoint. Here's another video that shows you how to do that. If you are using Google Slides for a PowerPoint, this is how you use Loom, which is actually what I'm recording this video on now. So there are multiple examples of explaining how to integrate narration into a PowerPoint. If you still cannot figure it out based on these 3 videos, go to YouTube and figure it out. I cannot help you more than the information I've already provided. All right, let's jump in. So let's go here. All right, so in Unit 4, your objective is going to be to write a report that gives instructions effectively for a task and integrate graphics to optimize the learning of the skill. So when you're doing an instruction report, you need to have very clear and simple writing. When you are writing a report to teach someone how to do something, you have to make sure it is in a language that they understand. But in order to be able to teach something, you yourself must have a thorough understanding of the procedure and all of its technical detail. So you need to pick something that you are very good at and can explain very well. Something I learned in school to become a teacher, it is one thing to know, it is another to teach. I know all about the book Don Quixote. It's one that I've read multiple times, but I don't think I could explain the stuff because it's a very difficult book to read. I don't know if I do a good job teaching it to my students. I can do Punnett squares in biology just because I remember how to do them, but it doesn't mean I can teach someone else how to do it. So you may know how to change the oil, but can you explain to someone how to do that? You must have the ability to put yourself in the place of the reader or the person trying to use your instructions, which is one of the main reasons why you guys will create a presentation where you do your instructions. Because if you don't show that you can use them, then it's not going to work. Be able to visualize the procedure in detail and willingness to go the extra distance to test your instructions on the kind of person you wrote them for. So see if your mom can change the oil based on the way you wrote it. See if your cousin can bake that cake. Good practice. So before writing your paper, you need to think about your audience. We've talked about audience a lot in here. This is the third week where you got to focus on an audience. Make sure you think about your familiarity of the audience and the task at hand. I would say I'm probably a novice at baking a cake, but I am under beginner at changing the oil in a car. So you've got to think about what level of audience you're writing for. And then make sure you're including the audience in the list of instructions so the reader knows who the intended audience is. So somewhere in your instruction report, you're going to say the intended audience is a beginner in this or is an expert in this. Procedure versus task versus step. So your procedure is the overall goal. My procedure is to change the oil. Actually, I don't know anything about changing the oil. My procedure is to bake a cake. A task is a semi-group of action within the procedure. So one of my tasks in baking the cake may be mixing my dry ingredients. And then the step is each individual step I take to contribute to the task, which ultimately finishes the procedure. So if I'm talking about cake, I may say that my step 1 is put 2 cups of flour in the bowl. Step 2, put a teaspoon of salt. Step 3, put a teaspoon of baking powder. Step 4, sift all these ingredients through a sifter into another bowl. All of that mixes my dry ingredients, which is my task. Remember, phases make things go easier. So you may have phase 1 is to gather the materials. Phase 2 is to do this. Phase 3 is to do this. Phase 4 is to do this. By grouping your steps, it may make it flow a little easier and feel less overwhelming to your audience. So here's how you can organize your instructions. And it 100% depends on what the task at hand is. You may have a task approach, meaning you may organize your steps based on the tasks that you need to accomplish and the order they need to go in and which makes sense to go first. This is easier because you're viewing the project as a whole and the steps it takes to go from A to B to F. Or you can do a tools approach where you're organizing based on what tools are needed that completes the steps with one tool and then moves on to the next. But it's hard to do that because it's hard to think of that overall picture. All right. So this is a good little organizer to help you to kind of figure out what you want. So your title is going to be the task at hand. And in this box is your introduction. What is the procedure? Who is the audience? And an overview. Equipment and supplies would need to go here. You may want to put the name here and a detailed description of it here, depending on how inexperienced they are. It might help to describe it. Then you have the heading for the actual instruction itself, and then the instructions themselves would go here. All right, so should I use graphics? And for me, the answer is yes. The more detailed your stuff is, the more pictures you give, the more specific your instructions are, the easier it is to follow. So if you tell your people that you need to use a folding spatula to make your frosting, a folding spatula is a different type of spatula than one you would use to flip an egg in a frying pan. So your folding spatula, it would make it easier for your readers or your audience to know what a folding spatula is if you provide a picture of that. So for this assignment within your instruction report, you've got to integrate 3 visuals. They can be images of tools, they can be a diagram of a step, or they can be the finished product. If they are not your pictures, you must include underneath them in teeny tiny little font a link where you got those from to give credit to the people who took the picture for you. Okay, so each item is going to need a name, example figure 1, oil filter, and a caption. This is the oil filter that needs to change the oil in the car. So let's look at how to insert the name and the caption. So I'm going to exit out of this, and I'm going to go into my student instruction report. I want to pause this for just a second. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the instruction report that we're using as the student sample, and I'm going to show you, using the instruction report, how to insert a caption for your image. So let's go ahead and go there right quick. We're going to go over all of these together shortly at the end, but let's go to this first one. So for cleaning the booth is his first image. And if you notice, he didn't take that, so he did include the source underneath it. But if I'm going to put an image in, I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to click on my picture, right click, and I'm going to go to insert caption. And I'm going to click on that there. So it's going to say figure 1, which is what you want it to say. So I'm going to put what it is. A clean booth, or a dirty booth versus a clean booth. And it's going to say figure, and it's going to be below. So I'm going to hit OK. And underneath it, it has figure 1, a dirty booth versus a clean booth. So each of my figures is going to have what it is underneath it. That way, I know as a reader what I'm looking at. All right, let's go back to the PowerPoint and continue our discussion. Okay, grammar to consider. Don't use personal pronouns. Within your instruction report, you don't want to say things like, I'm going to take the oil filter off, or my cake is going to rise, or you need to fold in the egg whites separately. What happens is when you do that, it makes it very personal, and it makes it more informal rather than formal. Instead, you want to use words like the mechanic is going to remove the oil filter before or in order to replace it, or the construction worker is going to tape the seams of the side of the drywall before mudding it. Or you could say the baker uses the folding spatula in order to fold in the egg whites separately into the souffle mixture. Make sure your proper nouns are always capitalized. That includes beginning of sentences. That includes the company names. If you're going to say that you need to use a Pyrex dish to bake your bread, then Pyrex should be capitalized because it's the name of a company. Make sure you're watching out for run-on sentences and commas. Run your instruction reports through a program like Grammarly. It will help you to find those errors. Or just simply like Google or Microsoft Word tell you that you're making errors with those underlined squigglies. Okay. Your paper is in MLA format. Make sure that you're looking at the writing expectations video to help. You need to single space your paper. You must cite your sources for the directions and the images. While you are doing a task that you know how to use the stuff, like you should know how to do this, that's why you're teaching it, it is important to make sure that you're verifying that with research. So I do recommend looking up some steps to help you to make sure that each step in your process is exact. Don't forget to include the image name and caption underneath your images, and include a table of figures on your works cited page. So, report guidelines. Make sure you're using a procedure that you normally follow at work or your program of study, or you can just do anything that you feel confident that you could teach. Right, you're going to write a set of instructions. This should be for new employees or for beginners. You are not doing an instruction report for someone who already knows what they're doing. This is for beginners. Assume they do not know the step-by-step process. You must have 3 graphics. So these are the things you need to have in your report. Title, your introduction must have a purpose statement and a summary of steps. a list or illustrations of the equipment, including the description of each item, technical background needed, and then safety information or cautions. So if you're jacking up a car, you need a safety information there. If you are baking a cake, make sure that if we're heating up the oven to 350, explain that could burn people. Explain that you need to get, oven mitts to get things out. Make sure that you have something to put underneath your cake pan so it doesn't burn your countertop. Don't forget cautions. You need to have a numbered list for each step, one action for each step that leads with a verb, which is your action words. Use bullets or letters for emphasis. Make sure you're emphasizing cautions or warnings, maybe bolding the word caution or turning it red. Graphics, and the final product to close out the report. All right. So let's get out of here for a minute. So the first thing you're going to do now that you've done this is you're going to need to put in your secret word. My secret word for this video is folded spatula. So folding spatula, because I've talked about a folding spatula a couple times. Folding spatula is my secret word. All right. So let's go back into Moodle here. So you are going to, after you do your secret word for this unit, you need to do the instructional report outline. This is where you're going to start thinking about, and this is due today as well. You are going to start thinking about what you want to do your project on. So what do I want to accomplish? What am I trying to teach? What can I fiscally teach? So if I've got to buy, maybe, if you've got to pay for stuff, can you buy stuff this week? Have you been paid from work? If you're going to bake a cake, you got to buy those ingredients. But if you don't have the money, you can teach us how to rotate the tires. You can do that for free if you have all the materials you need. It's up to you. So you're going to do the instructional report outline. You're going to open it. You're going to download it, and it's going to look like this. So this is where you're going to, once again, just like we did in the outline previously for the progress report, you're not necessarily writing in complete sentences. But what is my purpose? What is the summary? What's the list of equipment? What's the breakdown of instructions with any cautions or dangers? And then what is my conclusion? Fill this in, turn it in. Then by your middle of the week assignment, you will need to complete the instruction report. So let's go ahead and go through that student sample. Oh, that is out of order and it's driving me insane. Let's move that there. All right, let's go ahead and go through that student sample. We've already looked at it a little bit, but we're going to do it again. So at the top, I've got my title, Automotive Basic Painting Steps. I would probably capitalize the P, the B, and the S to make it look a little bit more professional here. Then I've got my basic summary. This will go over the basic procedure of painting in the automotive industry. It's recommended you not paint, blah, 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 blah. This is equipment and supplies here. Painting, what you need, paint gun, masking tape, broom and mop, paint suit and paint mask for your own health. So then he has got that task approach. My first task is I'm going to clean the booth. Here's my image with my figure. Here is all the steps that I need to do. Next task, mixing the paint. Figure. Here's my image. There's my caption. I have my stuff there. Painting the car. Same stuff there. All this stuff. And then my conclusion, which tells me about how long. One thing that I do recommend that I don't see just with a glance is he needs to make his cautions stand out. If there's something dangerous in very specific steps, make sure that it stands out. Now, your cautions can also be maybe not danger necessarily, but you could also say that your cautions are things that could screw up the process if done incorrectly. So be cautious of this step. Make sure you do this step accurately. All right. So that is what the instruction report looks like. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to have to create a PowerPoint where you go over how you take your instruction report and you make it into a visual. Something someone can watch. Now, you can do that in a couple of different ways. You can create a video, almost like a YouTube tutorial or a TikTok feed tutorial. I know that's the new thing, where you're simply You have your tools laid out on a counter. You see your full body. You're going over each of the tools and what they're used for. You're talking about your steps are just, it's part of an actual presentation. Whereas like you're doing a YouTube tutorial video on how to do these steps. I think that would be really cool. If you do that, you would simply just film yourself with your phone or your friend's phone, upload the video you create. You can use something like CapCut in TikTok and like splice them all together to make a 5-minute long video, which is the minimum that you would need it to be. And then you would put it into YouTube to create a link and just submit the link. I would open the link to watch it. That would be super easy. Or you could create a PowerPoint. So if you do Microsoft PowerPoint, you would need to watch this video here or this one. That will explain how to put those narrations into your PowerPoint. If you're using a Google slide, you would use Loom, which is something you can download for free on your computer, and that would be here. So let's bring up a student's PowerPoint and kind of go over it with you. So what he has done, he is showing how to use a digital multimeter. This is Joe's student. He's got a really well done PowerPoint here. And what he did was once he created the PowerPoint in its entirety, he went over to record and then hit from the beginning. And then he just went down here, and he put it into slideshow form like this. And he simply talked over the presentation as he went through it. And every time he changed slides, it put a new little doohickey mabobber there that I can click on and listen to it. Or if I listen to it in slideshow, it does it all for me. So let's go through the slides just to show you what this looks like. So slide 2 is the introduction. What is a digital multimeter? Who would use it? And what's covered in these instructions? He did not simply read this out loud. He actually explained what it was, explained the who, and explained the what. When you do a presentation, you don't put all the words on the slide. You put simple bullets that helps the reader to follow along, but your speech is verbal. It's what you're saying that we hear. Here are the equipment and supplies. These are pictures he has taken. You may not use stock images for your presentations. You must do images that you have taken yourself. If you use stock images, you will not get credit for those images, so it's like you didn't have them in there in the first place. So do make sure that you have real images, not stock images. So these are all his images. Equipment and supplies, that's him testing the multimeter. These are different pieces he's zoomed in on to show different parts. He's explaining this. This is him doing whatever this is. I know nothing about multimeters. I'm just showing you what he's got. He's showing the setups. He's showing how to break a circuit. He's showing how to take a measurement. He's showing how to measure the resistance, and it's basically showing the breakdown of how to use the multimeter. And then his conclusion is at the end. So this is the expectation. If you do a PowerPoint, this is what I expect to see. So you can do it, like I mentioned before, you can either just do like a TikTok or YouTube tutorial, or you can do a presentation. But either way, this is due on the Sunday, the very last day of the assignment. Now, the last thing I will say, the issue I have with people turning in the oral presentation is sometimes the file is too big to turn in. If that is the case, just simply email me and say the file is too big to turn in on Moodle. Here is my assignment. And then what I'd like for you to turn in the instruction report is just a Microsoft Word document that says, check your email for my assignment. That way I remember, because sometimes it's a week before I check these, because they do take me longer, and I can't do this while my students are in class. I have to do this on planning periods so I can hear it, or I have to do it at home. And sometimes this is I do take a little longer with this assignment to grade. So if you put a Google Doc or a Word doc and you turn that in as the assignment and it says, please check your email for my project, I'll remember to go and look for it. All right, that is how to do the oral presentation and the instruction report for Unit 3. This is a larger project. Hopefully you're not watching this on Tuesday. Hopefully you're watching this on Monday and you've given yourself a little bit of time. Like you're watching it on Monday and you've got till Tuesday to do the instruction planning assignment, giving you a little bit more time to start kind of contemplating what you want to do. This one does take a little bit of time to complete, so do make sure you get this done on time. If you have any questions, make sure to let me know, and I will see you in Unit 4. Bye, guys.